They tried to ban it. They tried to burn it. They tried to bury it beneath the sands of time. But no matter how hard they fought, the Qur'an stood unmoved. It didn't vanish. It didn't fade. It grew stronger. Because the truth has a way of echoing through the ages. And this book, this divine revelation, didn't just whisper truth. It thundered with it. They fear the Qur'an. Not because it's violent, but because it's powerful. Not because it commands war, but because it commands peace. Justice, mercy, and submission to one God alone. Without intermediaries, without corruption, without falsehood. It threatens no one who lives in truth. But to those who build empires on lies, on exploitation, on the backs of the weak, yes, to them, the Qur'an is a fire they cannot put out. It begins with a name. Not the name of a king or a profanation, but the name of the most merciful. The Qur'an opens not with vengeance, but with mercy, and that mercy shakes tyrants to their core. Because when people realize that God is closer than their jugular vein, when they realize that they were never meant to another human being, when they see that the Qur'an liberates the soul from every chain, they become ungovernable by fear. Do not despair. They fear it because it creates believers who would rather die on their feet than live on their knees. They fear it because it makes you ask questions. Dangerous questions. Questions like, why am I here? Who created me? What's the purpose of life? And what happens after death? The Qur'an answers all of it, not with man-made philosophies. Not with contradictions, not with poetic confusion, but with clarity that slices through the fog of doubt. It is not a book of stories. It is a book of awakening. A revolution wrapped in words. A manual for the soul that refuses to submit to anything but God. This book changed the world. Not through violence, but through guidance. When it was revealed, it took a people buried in tribalism, superstition, idol worship, and darkness, and it raised them to become lights for the world. It didn't just make them better worshippers. It made them better husbands, better wives, better rulers, better workers, better neighbors, better humans. When the Qur'an was revealed, it didn't descend to kings and scholars. It came to a man who was unlettered, a shepherd, a man who had never written a word, because God wanted to prove something, that this revelation was not from man. It was from the heavens. It was a challenge. And to this day, 1400 years later, that challenge remains unanswered. Produce something like it. The Qur'an dares. They mocked it. They attacked it. They labeled it a myth. But no one could replicate its depth, its beauty, its power. Why do they fear the Qur'an? Because dictators can't weaponize it. Because corporations can't market it. Because politicians can't twist it. It calls out injustice wherever it sees it, even among its own followers. It doesn't allow blind loyalty to tribe or nation. It demands truth, even if it's against yourself. What other book speaks like this? They fear it because people read it and come back to life. Dead hearts start to beat. Lost souls start to rise. Addicts leave their poison. Thieves return stolen goods. Oppressors begin to shake. Because when you stand in front of the Qur'an, you're standing in front of a mirror, and it doesn't lie. It shows you who you are, who you were meant to be, and who you've been pretending to be. That's why it's feared. That's why they wage war against it. Not with armies, but with words. They call it backward. They call it barbaric. They mock the hijab, the beard, the prayer, the fast. But they know, deep down, they know, that once someone connects to the Qur'an, they become free. Free from society's pressures. free from fake standards, free from slavery to wealth, fame, lust, and self. It doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you need. When your world is collapsing, it reminds you, indeed, with hardship comes ease. When you feel forgotten, it says, your Lord has not forsaken you. When you want to give up, it tells you the story of the prophets, how every single one of them suffered, was mocked, rejected, but still rose, because they knew they had God with them. The Quran doesn't pretend life is easy. It tells you straight you will be tested with fear, with loss, with hunger, but it also tells you how to endure, how to be patient, how to fight for justice, how to walk the earth with humility, but stand before tyrants with courage. It teaches you that your worth is not in your skin color, your wealth, your language, or your passport. Your worth is in your heart, your character, your sincerity. Who else tells you that today? They fear it because it sees through them, through their lies, their wars, their greed. It doesn't play games. It calls out oppression in all its forms. From Pharaoh to today's tyrants, the Quran is a sword of truth, and no matter how much they silence its followers, the words remain, eternal, unchanged. That alone is a miracle. Not a single letter has changed. Not a single verse has been lost. Memorized by millions. Recited every single day. In every corner of the earth. In the deserts of Africa, the jungles of Indonesia, the prisons of the West, the streets of Gaza, the cities of Europe, this book lives. They ask, why is Islam spreading? And the answer is simple. Because the Quran speaks to the human soul. It breaks the illusion of materialism. It dismantles pride. It reaches into the places therapy can't touch. It tells you, verily, in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. It doesn't need flashy marketing, or billions of dollars, or political backing. It spreads from heart to heart, through a whisper, through a verse, through a tear rolling down a new Muslim's cheek. They fear the Quran because people who've never seen a Muslim in their life read it and cry. They read it and say, this is what I've been searching for. Former pastors, scientists, soldiers, celebrities, atheists, all finding something in it that the world never gave them. Not comfort, not entertainment, but truth. And truth scares those who live off lies. But no matter how hard they fight, the Quran remains. A light in the dark, a map to the lost, a sword against tyranny, a shield for the weak, and a promise for those who believe. They can't erase it, because it was never written by man. It came from the Creator, and the Creator has promised to protect it. You fear what you cannot control, and they fear the Quran because they cannot control it. They cannot corrupt it. They cannot buy it. They cannot rewrite it. All they can do is lie about it. But even their lies crumble when people read it for themselves. Read it. Just once. Not to criticize, not to debate, just to see what it says. You'll find a voice that knows you better than you know yourself. Not despair. You'll find verses that feel like they were written just for you. And you'll understand why they fear it. Because when truth is known, falsehood vanishes. That's the promise of the Quran, and the world is witnessing it. One heart at a time, one soul at a time. No power on earth can stop what was written in the heavens. And so, they will fear it, and we will follow it. They lock it away behind the word, extremist. They attach it to violence. Not because the Quran teaches hate, but because they fear the love it inspires. Love that makes a man stand in the middle of the night, weeping to his Creator, while the rest of the world sleeps. Love that makes a woman guard her modesty, not because society told her to, but because her Lord asked it of her. That kind of love is dangerous. It makes you immune to manipulation, immune to trends, immune to control. They fear the Qur'an because it reshapes identity. It tears down false images of superiority, of nationalism, of arrogance, and rebuilds a person from the inside, not to serve the system, but to serve the one who made them. What happens to a world built on consumerism when people stop needing what they're told to want? What happens to nations built on war when their youth choose peace and prayer over rebellion and rage? This book doesn't only tell stories. It tells truth in a way that feels alive. The words hit you, not like ink on paper, but like waves crashing against your heart. It speaks of Moses not as a myth, but as a real man who stood up to the most powerful tyrant on earth with nothing but faith. It tells you of Yusuf, who was thrown into a well by his own brothers and still forgave. It tells you of Maryam, who bore a child while the world accused her. Of Ayub, who lost everything and still whispered thanks. These aren't just stories. They are the blueprint of endurance. The Quran doesn't glamorize prophets. It doesn't turn them into superheroes. It shows you their scars, their pain, their doubts, so that you do not despair. Broken and flawed, can look in the mirror and still believe that Allah can choose you too. That He sees something in you. That He never stopped calling you. Not once. Not even after the 1,000th mistake. And when people find that message, they change, not from fear, but from love. Love of a God who forgives more than He punishes. Who accepts repentance before the lips can even form the words. That is the power of the Quran. It turns sinners into worshippers. It turns the arrogant into humble leaders. It turns the hopeless into warriors of light. They fear the Quran because it reminds people of death. Not to scare them, but to wake them. To pull them out of the illusion that this life is forever. It tells you, with chilling clarity, that you were not born to chase this world. You were made for something more. Eternal gardens, rivers beneath your feet, peace that never ends, and most of all, the nearness of God. But to get there you must rise. You must fight your ego, your desires, the whispers that say, just one more sin. You must walk the path of prophets, not in perfection, but in sincerity. And that's what terrifies them. Because when the Quran enters a man's heart, nothing can stop him. Not fear, not poverty, not hate, not bullets. They've tried to make people afraid of Islam, of Muslims, of the Quran. But all it takes is one person to read it for themselves. One verse. One moment of silence between the noise of the world. And suddenly, the fog lifts. The lies unravel. And the truth stands alone. They fear the Quran because it doesn't bend. It doesn't evolve with culture. It doesn't submit to trends. It doesn't change based on majority vote. It speaks today with the same strength it spoke 1400 years ago. Do not despair. The same verses that shook the heart of Umar ibn al-Khattab, that broke the pride of Arabia's most arrogant chiefs, are the same verses whispered today in prisons, in bedrooms, in refugee camps, and in mansions. Because the human heart has not changed, and neither has the cure. The Quran makes you look inward. Do not despair. It tells you that paradise is not found outside, but inside. When the heart submits, when the soul surrenders, when the ego dies, and to a world that thrives on distraction, that kind of stillness is terrifying. They fund armies. They print lies. They create fear. But they can't kill a book that lives in hearts. They can't erase words memorized by children. They can't silence something that was never dependent on media to spread. Because truth doesn't need permission. It doesn't need translation. It needs sincerity. And even that, the Qur'an provides. When the Qur'an speaks, it does not ask. It declares, saying He is Allah, the One. That one verse alone has shattered entire belief systems. Because once you understand that there is only one worth worshipping, then every other idol, of fame, of wealth, of race, of self, must fall. They fear the Qur'an because it invites you to a life they cannot profit from. A life of submission. A life where success is measured not by bank accounts, but by hearts that are clean, tongues that speak truth, hands that feed the poor, lives that bow in prayer. That kind of life threatens the machine. It threatens the illusion. They mock it, hoping to weaken it. But mocking only increases its power. Burning it only makes more people curious. Banning it only proves its impact. Because when you fear a book this much, you reveal how powerful it really is. And yet, the Qur'an is not arrogant. It doesn't beg to be believed. It simply invites. This is guidance for those who are conscious of God. That's all. It doesn't manipulate. It doesn't force. It speaks and leaves the choice to you. That's why, despite all odds, it continues to spread, in secret, in silence, in prisons and hospitals, in homes where no one believed, in cities where mosques were once feared, now filled with people crying in sujood, converts who never met a Muslim, but read the book and found their purpose, scholars who gave up their degrees to serve its message, hearts that beat not for status, but for the chance to die saying La ilaha illallah. They fear the Qur'an not because they don't understand it, but because deep down they do. They recognize its beauty, its precision, its impossibility, and they know, if others hear it, feel it, taste its truth, they will never go back to ignorance again. Because the Qur'an doesn't just change lives, it changes generations, it changes bloodlines. A single verse can break centuries of blindness. One word can start a revolution in the heart. That is the fear. That one day, everyone will see what this book really is. Not a relic, not a threat, not an ancient manuscript, but a living miracle, breathing truth, beating against every falsehood. A light from the heavens that no darkness can extinguish. And that's why they fear it. Top motivational are Islamic viral videos, mean by app dikenj. Do not despair, wu script ek natural pause ya powerful thorpe rukti high, formal closing lines nai hoti. Ye listener ko reflect kan k mocha dita high.